Very excited to have this webinar today. So we're going to talk about subscriptions today. It took us a lot of time to find Bryan, find an expert in subscriptions. Recurring revenue is obviously super important, especially in the M&A space. So thanks for joining, Bryan. Maybe I'll let you say a few words about you and what you do before we start.
Yeah, sounds good. Yael, so excited to be joining you today. So, guys, my name's Bryan, and I run 100 Celsius. We're an e-commerce subscription growth agency. So we work with predominantly Shopify brands to help them grow their recurring revenue through subscription programs. And so, a lot of cool stuff that we're going to cover today. And we've been working with Fortunet and Yael's team for a while. And I think that this is a topic that's really exciting for me, and I think for a number of you here, because who doesn't want to sell their e-commerce business someday if they get a great valuation, a great offer. And for those of you with replenishable, consumable products, subscription boxes, you have an awesome opportunity with subscriptions. So excited to dive into that today.
Thank you. And for those of you who don't know Fortunet, so we're an investment bank. We help e-commerce businesses exit. We've been operating for almost 6 years. We were involved in over 150 different deals. And very excited to be here and discuss this topic that has been raised many, many times. So this time we're going to do it in the kind of presentation mode. I've asked Bryan to go deep into the topic, and we'll talk a bit about how this affects the valuation. So let me share my screen for a second.
I can see it.
Okay, cool. So this is what we're going to cover today. So we'll talk about the e-commerce acquisition landscape, and then we'll talk about specifically subscriptions and how they affect the valuation of your brand when you exit. And then Bryan will talk about the different types of recurring revenues, the principle for e-commerce subscription growth, and then a few detailed subscription growth case studies that we're all waiting to hear. You're going to have time for questions, but you can do it while we speak and ask questions while we present. It's very interactive, so feel free to ask, and in the chat or raise your hand. Both would work. So I'll start with the acquisition landscape. We've been talking about since 2022, 2023, what's happening in the e-commerce space. Are there acquisition, and if so, what is being sold right now? What we see today is that there's a good market for strong brands, for sustainable brands. So for these type of businesses, the multiples are very healthy. We're mostly talking about larger businesses. The brands that are not differentiated, the smaller ones, would be more difficult to sell and would obtain lower valuations. Profitability, of course, has always been king and maybe queen, and remains so. It's the more profitable you are, and we're going to talk about how subscriptions affect your profitability. But the more you're profitable, the more there's demand for your business, and so the valuation obviously would be higher. Who is buying today? So if you look at least at Fortunet, most of the deals we've done in the past 12 months would be with private equity firms, with strategic buyers, and also with large e-commerce operators that are actively acquiring. These can be, by the way, sometimes the top 100 Amazon brands. it can be D2C aggregators, and it can be any strong e-commerce operator. E-commerce has become a mainstream investment avenue. When we got into the space in 2018 and even before 2016, this was quite unique to invest in an e-com business or to acquire an e-commerce business. Today, it's not unique anymore. I think every large corporation has made an acquisition in the e-commerce space. So that became that's not trendy even anymore. It's just there and it's stable. In terms of what buyers are looking for, so there's a whole list of many things. I try to think of what's relevant here in our case, but generally speaking, of course, buyers are looking for recurring revenue stream. They're attracted to businesses with recurring revenue, and because they're more predictable, because there's a growth potential, and we'll talk a lot about that. They're also looking for businesses with high customer lifetime value, and Bryan is going to explain how this plays out with subscriptions businesses. But they're generally looking for brands with strong customer loyalty, where the churn rates are low, and there's an easy way to upsell and cross-sell. It all comes down at the end to profitability and your expenses and your marketing costs. Three, one of the most important thing, of course, is the ability to scale the operation. So when you acquire a brand, you would want to know a brand that you can take to the next level. And of course, you want a brand that has a unique value proposition. So I was talking earlier about the non-differentiated brands. These are very difficult to sell. You want a strong brand recognition, if possible, and because that will obviously help you fend off competition. So that's generally what they're looking for. Now, if we look a bit at the
Yael, can I interject really quickly?
Of
I just
course.
had a quick question
Yes.
that some people might be thinking, but when it comes to selling your brand, is there a specific revenue range that you're seeing entrepreneurs and business owners getting kind of the best valuations at, and sort of maybe you can talk us through like what
Sure.
size of businesses are selling right now?
Sure. So it depends what type of business, of course. I think there could be a sale for every type of business at every size. Even 200K businesses are being sold on online platforms. We, as an investment bank, are focusing on the larger businesses. I think that for example, if you're selling on Amazon and you're an Amazon-focused brand, while in 2020, 2021, you could sell a 2 million, 3 million business easily. These days, it's more difficult. So for an Amazon brand, for example, generally, if you want to sell to a private equity firms or to strategic buyers, they would be looking at larger businesses. So at least 2-3 million in EBITDA, in annual profit. And so the businesses that they're looking at are larger. But and when we're talking about valuations, when you look today at smaller businesses, you would see lower valuations. When we're talking about brands that are in the beauty industry, for example, where there's a lot of recurring revenue and subscriptions. Some of them, if you're looking at a brand with 3 to 5 million EBITDA, sometimes the valuation can be 3 to 4 times the revenue, the annual revenue. So it can go very, very far. And of course, for small non-differentiated brands, you could get stuck at the low valuations of 2, 3, or even less, or even not be able to sell it. So kind of a large range. But generally speaking, I think these days it's just easier to sell larger brands. So now let's focus for a second as to why acquirers are attracted to businesses with recurring revenue and specifically subscriptions. So they have, of course, a consistent revenue stream. There's a predictable income. Usually there's no crazy seasonality. And even if there is, you would see kind of a stable graph and then some seasonality. You could have good forecasting. You could have, as a buyer, a good financial planning. So that makes it obviously easier, and you can make informed decisions as an acquirer. We call it, I think that subscriptions would be like marrying your repeated customers. So you have them and now you kind of lock them with you for a period of time. And that allows you to know them better. And then they would be more invested in your brand. So they're less likely to leave, which obviously makes it more attractive as a business. There's obviously a lower risk for a buyer when there's a stable income every month from the same customers. It reduces the financial risk of like fluctuations in the market because they're already your clients, or competitive pressures. These are your clients, they are there, and you feel more comfortable acquiring a brand like that, as opposed to a one-time sale. Of course, that doesn't mean that durable products versus consumable. We're going to talk about that a bit, and I have a few questions about it. But it doesn't mean that durable products that don't have recurring revenue are not attractive. But when we're talking about risk, obviously the risk is lower for this type of businesses. Like I said, the subscription is a way to kind of lock them in. They're less likely to switch to competitors because they already paid and they're already in this program. And of course, the last point is probably the most important one. You have reduced acquisition costs with subscription businesses. They are there. You don't need to invest every time again and again in attracting new buyers, because you have your base of acquirers. And that allows you to focus on other things like retention, keep them in, keep them happy. When you have less acquisition costs, obviously your profit goes up, and very often we see very good margins and good profitability for this type of businesses. Now, let me talk about a few examples, and then one from out there and one from our world, and then Bryan will continue with the practical examples. So the Dollar Shave Club was one of the most famous one, maybe because they were one of the first making a huge noise around it. They were acquired by Unilever for $1 billion. Mostly because of the successful subscription model that they have, and that they had back then. Everybody was talking about high quality shaving tools, and they came with this simple shaving products that are just good enough, but that you get them to your home. So that was one of the first and most famous. There's Blue Apron, or a Blue Apron that was valued at 1.9 billion during their IPO, and that was largely because of the subscription model that they had. These are the meal kits that you get ingredients every week to your home, and then you can cook them. So instead of like going and buying and thinking what you're going to prepare, it's all there for you. I used to buy them. I was part of it when I lived in New York. And then the third one, that's not so much in the kind of e-commerce, but I thought it's an interesting example. There's Adobe that you used to buy with a one-time purchase model. when they switch to a subscription-based model, that has really increased their valuation and their stock price. So that shows once again the strength of recurring revenue. Now let's talk about a specific case that we had. So that was a business, an e-commerce business that we sold. The products were not sexy, to say the least. I can't say what it is because we can't disclose exactly what the product is. The client is very confidential, but let's say it's like maybe not toilet paper, but not so far from that. Something that you could use a lot. Maybe not in every home, but in many homes. It was evergreen, so while it isn't sexy, it's something that's consumable and evergreen, which was of course an advantage. And they had a subscribe and save model, which encouraged customer to sign up to enjoy, of course, the reduction in the price. We were very worried because we thought that it's a fantastic business. They did have some differentiation, even if it wasn't sexy. They had a good growth. They had a good margins, but the product was so generic. We were very worried that there would be no bids on it. So we were quite hesitant, and we shared it with the client. This is how their income looked like. This is month by month, and this is the first year and then the second year. So you can see it's quite stable with a few small peaks. And then when we went to market, we immediately saw that there's actually a very good demand for this business. We ran a competitive process. We got, if I recall, over maybe 10 or 12 different offers for this particular business. The valuation eventually was extremely high. And the whole process was quite fast. We just went to market. We had many offers very quickly, and this is and we felt in this case that the subscribe and save model was what made it unique. And the demand for this business, if it wasn't for or if there wasn't a recurring revenue for that particular business, there would probably be a completely different valuation and probably just a few offers, if any. So that was for us a clear example, and one of the first where we saw that it was so evident. That was our client after the after the exit. And then I'll end maybe with an example that many people like to talk about because it made some some of the news in the at least in the Amazon space. So Hero Cosmetics is actually an Amazon native brand that has grown there. In the skincare industry. They were selling acne treatment products, those patches. And then they were sold for $630 million to Church & Dwight. Now, if you look at what happened there, the result was a very good valuation. They got 14x on the EBITDA, which is great when we're talking about e-commerce businesses and Amazon native businesses, and generally any business. They had subscription services for their popular product, the Mighty Patch, so that you could get it regularly and never run out of it. It was obviously a strategic fit for Church & Dwight, which were looking to expand their portfolio through acquisitions. And they saw the reduced risk here because there was a very stable revenue, and they could see how they grow this and take it to the next level. So that was one of the most famous one in the Amazon industry. I thought it would be interesting. This is an acquisition timeline. We can talk about it later if you'd like, but I'll let now Bryan talk about the interesting stuff.
Man, thanks so much, Yael. That was I found that really interesting. 14x EBITDA. That's
Yep.
pretty wild
Yep.
for Hero Cosmetics. I mean, like, it's a huge brand, amazing company, but I think you did such a good job kind of talking through like why subscriptions, why recurring revenue. If the eventual goal is an acquisition, is a sale, like few things are going to set you up better for that outcome than prioritizing that recurring revenue, right? That profitability. When you think about um, the market's re-emphasis now on profitability, this is one of the best things you could possibly do, right? And we'll talk about why
Yes.
that is. All right, guys, before we hop into kind of the more like some of the more practical side, the case studies, just want to get a quick gut check. How are we feeling? Any initial questions, thoughts? If you want to throw a thumbs up, I don't know if our chat, I think it's working. I
And the
think
Q&A is open,
the
and we
Q the
can.
Q&A is open. So if you have a question, if you have a comment, feel free to drop it in there, and we'll either get to it, as I'm going through, or as we get to the Q&A session. Give us a sec.
You can start, and then I'll stop you if we have a question.
All right, sounds
All
good.
good, Moshe says.
Can you all see my screen here? The strategies for D2C subscription growth.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So let's hop into some kind of practical stuff about subscriptions. So we've talked about the why, right? Why do you want to get subscriptions? It's not just for better outcomes when you go to sell. It's also because you just have a better business, right? It's more profitable. It's more predictable. Uh, the math behind it is actually simpler, and we'll kind of get into that in a second. Um, but when we think about subscriptions, right, and e-commerce in general, I know a lot of you are going to be more from the Amazon world. And so Amazon, you have really that subscribe and save offer. And at 100 Celsius, we work with a lot of brands that are predominantly focused on, yes, Amazon growing their subscribe and save base there, but especially on Shopify, their recurring revenue there on their own D2C channel. And there's lots of advantages to having both. Um, but with a Shopify brands and the experience you can create there, there's a whole bunch of additional opportunities for things like controlling the customer experience, getting more data, all of that, and owning the communication. And so for this presentation, we're going to talk a lot about more of that Shopify D2C side. But again, the fundamentals from like a product positioning standpoint are going to be very similar. So when you think about Shopify, you can really bucket recurring revenue into three primary different categories, right? And subscription or recurring revenue models. So number one is probably the one most of you are the most familiar with, which is going to be that subscribe and save model. It's exactly what it sounds. It's the Amazon thing. And this is a great choice for consumable brands. So a couple of good examples might be Magic Mind, the productivity shots, or something like Bloom Nutrition, right? Greens powder, things like that. You're consuming it, you need it on a regular basis. You have subscription boxes that are going to be, kind of curated sets of products delivered monthly, quarterly, etc., around hobbies, interests, different passion products. So, good example here: Battle Box, Bloomsy Box. You can build awesome businesses with a lot of really unique opportunities in this space. And then membership programs. So we're not going to spend quite as much time talking about memberships today, but I wanted to bring it up because a lot of brands, talk to us or come to us and say, "Hey, I don't have a traditionally like consumable product or brand, but I still want to introduce some sort of recurring revenue aspect to my business. How is that possible?" And the answer oftentimes is membership programs. So I wanted to just kind of highlight a really good example of this would be True Classic. Obviously, you probably know True Classic, one of the fastest growing companies in the e-commerce space in the world, and they they have a really cool membership called the Insiders Club that is a $12 a year or $1 a month, and you sign up, they pitch it to all of their customers, and you get all these different benefits, right? So even though they don't have a traditionally like consumption-driven product, they can still tap into a recurring revenue base that also increases their customers' LTV over time because they think, well, geez, I already have a membership to True Classic. Why would I go shop for a t-shirt anywhere else, right? Because I can get 20% back. So they get the recurring revenue and highly correlated with increased customer value. All right. We kind of already touched on this, so I won't spend too much time. If you're trying to decide what's the best model for my business right now, just know that you can make a lot of different types work, right? There's a lot of flexibility, but the most straightforward are going to be if you sell something that's consumable, supplements, skincare, pet food, anything like that, subscribe and save models are going to be a really straightforward slam dunk fit. If you have a product that is more kind of around novelty, interest, passion, kids, things like that, education, you might want to consider a subscription box. And then, of course, memberships can be applied to most brands or combined with either one of these models as well.
Brian,
Okay.
maybe let me stop you and ask
Yeah.
a question. So we just spoke today with a brand that has, let's say, kind of cleaning products,
Mm-hmm.
and for them, I mean, people are buying it again and again, but it takes time, and you can't really predict how much time it's going to take for the product to finish. So it's not going to be every month. It's going to be maybe every 4, every 5 months. Could these fit subscribe and save or other programs?
Yes, that's a super good question. We can, I think I have a bit on that uh, a little bit later, but short answer is yes, you can absolutely make it work for subscriptions. But you have to really think about what's a common sense billing and delivery cadence for most of my
Mm-hmm.
customers. And so this is actually such a common problem and obstacle where brands will come to us and they're like, man, you know, we have subscriptions enabled, but we have such high churn. Like we can't get anybody to stay past 1 to 2 renewals. What's going on? And what you realize is if you kind of dig into their customer data, you realize that like most customers that are buying one off or replenishing are not replenishing on a monthly basis. Maybe they're taking 2 months, 3 months, 4 months to replenish, but their default subscription option is deliver every month. So of
Mm-hmm.
course you're going to have high churn because there's a mismatch. Much
Right.
better approach in that situation would be defaulting to a longer delivery cadence. So defaulting to like get this on auto replenishment every 3 months or every 4 months. And the cool thing about modern subscription apps, these is that customers can, if you have it set up to do this and to allow this, customers can personalize their individual delivery cadence. So even if they start on it every 3 months and then realize, you know what, I actually need it every 2 months, or I need it a little early, they can customize it on the back end. But what you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do is you don't want to acquire them on a completely unreasonable kind of billing and delivery cadence, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question.
There's a few questions, by the way, in the
Oh
Q&A.
yeah?
What are typical payback periods on a subscription business?
You know what? That's a really good question, and it totally depends on the brand. Now, uh, what I would say is that you want to the fundamentals of unit economics and ROI on your advertising customer acquisition shouldn't change regardless of if you're a subscription business or not, right? So the goal should really be you ideally you'd like to break even on your new customer acquisition or make a profit, right? But you really don't. I think it's oftentimes kind of a myth of like subscriptions you can scale much easier because you have this awesome LTV and you acquire a subscriber and they're going to have some hypothetical 6-month LTV that's way higher. It's like you really want to just be clear like and really look into those numbers yourself. What is my actual payback period? I typically wouldn't want to see something that had a payback of longer than 2 to 3 months, right? And if you really wanted to scale, and ideally you would be breaking even right from the start.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Not mine, it's Meryl's.
Thanks, Meryl. Thanks, Meryl. Okay, so how do we grow our subscription base? Here's what I love about subscriptions, guys. The subscriptions are just a math equation. And so I don't know how many of you, were good at math in high school or middle school. Um, I don't use 90% of what I learned, but simple equations like this for subscription growth are what I like. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in this simplicity. So subscription growth, if you want to increase your active subscriber base, it's literally just one simple equation. How many subscribers you acquire minus how many churn. And of course, the total recurring revenue also includes how much they're actually paying you, right? So their AOV, their recurring order. But when you think about strategies to grow your subscription recurring revenue base, almost all of them are going to touch on one of these two levers or customer value, right? So increase the number of subscribers or decrease subscriber churn. The cool thing about subscriptions, and Liz kind of touches on here, where there's only 3 ways to grow a business, right? You can acquire more customers, you can get them buying more often, and you can get them spending more with you. Literally the only 3 ways to grow a business. And subscriptions are awesome relative to kind of one-off focused businesses, because when you acquire somebody on subscription, you're like kind of like Yael was saying, you're baking retention and repeat purchases into their DNA from the start. Think about this in contrast with like a t-shirt business. I don't know. You sell t-shirts, you sell things one-off. You acquire the customer and you're hoping that they're going to come back. You're marketing to them to come back. But there's nothing, their default do nothing response is nothing, right? They buy once, and then if nothing changes, they're not going to come back again. And that's one of the reasons that most businesses have such a huge one-time buyer problem, where they spend all this money acquiring largely unprofitable customers from the first order, and then they just never come back again, right? So getting to that second purchase is so key for brands if you want to grow and be profitable, because that second, third, fourth orders are where most of the profit comes from if you're growing through advertising. So subscriptions are awesome because when you acquire somebody on subscription, the default do nothing response is buy again, right? So if like nothing changes, they're going to order again. And that is one of the main reasons why subscription brands typically have, higher customer lifetime values, higher repurchase rates than other types of businesses. And then the other cool thing about subscriptions, and we'll talk more about this, is it presents a lot of really unique opportunities actually to increase your customers' AOV and value by prepaid longer plans. So for example, if you have a supplement brand, instead of just selling a monthly, you might sell a 3-month supply every 90 days, or a 6-month supply every 180 days, and front load that revenue. And once you have a customer on one line, it's much easier to upsell them into other products, other subscription lines, one-time add-ons. So there's a ton that you can do there once you've established that recurring baseline. Now, there's a million ways and different tactics and just things that we could talk about here. We don't have a million minutes. And so what I wanted to do is before we get into kind of the practical case studies, I just want to tell you at 100 Celsius, we have kind of 6 primary things, elements that we think are really important in that recipe or playbook for subscription growth, right? So if you want to grow your subscriptions, philosophically, here's some of the main things that we really care about. So number 1, you need great products, right? So that's a prerequisite. If your products suck, there's really no saving you. Like you can spend all the money, you can acquire customers really aggressively, but if people aren't getting the results or the outcomes that they wanted with your products, not getting it fast enough, etc., it's going to be really, really hard to grow, and it's no business model or marketing is going to save that. When it comes to products, a few considerations, right? Selling subscription products are different than one-offs, because not only do you need to sell the value of the product, but you also need to sell you the value of using or consuming that product over an extended period of time. We call that the continuity narrative. So ideally, when you're going to sell your products, you really want to be thoughtful about your messaging and your positioning, and not only think about, how do I sell this product now, but what's the recurring use case? What's the continuity narrative for this product? We also see too, I mean, just ideally you would have a product where you would see results with it quickly. So like if you have a supplement, supplements that take 90 days for the results to kick in are going to have a much higher churn rate than supplements that you could take and feel different in 2 hours, right? That's one of the big reasons that people churn, is because they don't see results fast enough. Maybe they're not being consistent enough. That's something that you want to be thoughtful about in your product selection. Two, the right tech. So the technology that you use to grow your subscriptions matters a lot. It makes a big difference. And we'll talk about this in a sec. This is something that we see a lot of times with newer businesses. Maybe, you've been an Amazon seller for a while, you're getting started on Shopify, and you're kind of getting everything set up for the first time. You're ramping things up. Or maybe you're just sort of a newer, earlier stage business. You're looking to make sure that you don't overspend. And one of the big problems is brands will often opt for the cheaper subscription apps versus going with something that is a little bit more powerful. And almost always we see them as they grow and they actually hit their goals, they have to replatform. And replatforming is always, kind of a messy process. You would prefer not to do it. So you want to make sure you're on the right subscription app from the start. This is optimized selling plan. So this is something that, Yael, you brought up, and this kind of goes back to that question of like, are your selling and delivery plans aligned with the ways your customers are actually using and consuming your products? Having a mismatch there is one of the biggest reasons that brands struggle with high subscription churn, is because they have all these customers on monthly plans or whatever, but people don't need it every month. And so just getting somebody on subscription, it doesn't mean anything if they don't stay. And so it's really important that you're thoughtful about that you do some analysis and you align those default subscription shipping and billing plans with the way customers are actually using your stuff. If anybody has any questions about that, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We can.
So by the way, would you do like an average? Because, if you look at cleaning products, some people would use it every day, all the time, and a lot of it. And so, like, there could be a huge range of, what do you do? Do you take an average? And if so, do you take the, more frequent, or would you prefer less frequent?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So, I mean, you want to give people options, and you don't have to force. Like, I wouldn't only put one option. You can give people
Right.
You can say, do you want it every month? Every 2 months, every 3 months, that sort of thing. Another lever that you have there is quantity. So let's say you have a heavy user. Instead of just doing kind of like a one quantity set, you could say, get a 2-pack or a 3-pack of this, and you get it delivered every month, or you get it delivered every 2 months. So having both quantity options and frequency options allows you to kind of customize that and people to choose the cadence that works best for them. There's an art to it. It really depends on the brand, and everybody's going to have it structured a little different. But the key thing is that you don't offer all the options on the front end. You'd rather offer just the most, kind of the 80-20 of it, allow people to customize on the back end, but still,
Right.
still give intuitive options on the front.
So question that was asked, we are working on increasing our subscription revenue as a percentage of revenue. We are currently at 12% of our revenue as a subscription. What have you seen as a sweet spot? I can imagine it's probably north of 50%. What is it? A good question.
That is a good question. So we're working with a brand right now that is larger, around 30 million or so a year, 30 to 40 million, and they have, I would say, like a very strong subscription base and subscription business, and they're doing north of 50% of their total revenue every month via subscriptions. So both one-off and recurring. That I think is a great goal to shoot for. I really love that philosophy as a business. Like you say, you know what? I want my business to be subscription first, right? Like
Right.
those are the kind of customers that I want. I want to grow that. I know that that's going to be the best outcome for the business. And so if you can get above half of your revenue, subscription revenue, I mean, I think that's where you should aim for. But I think if you're at 12, I'm sure that you could get to, 20, 30% probably via some, relatively simple tweaks and shifts, maybe in your conversion or acquisition funnel, your PDPs, or maybe what you're doing on the back end. So I think that there's obviously a range. It totally depends on the overall makeup of your business, but north of 50% is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
David is asking, how can you subscribe an Amazon subscriber to one product when you can't contact them?
You know what? That's one of the limitations of Amazon, right? And
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I think that there's a big opportunity even for Amazon, Amazon sellers that are doing really well on that platform to explore something like Shopify, right? And diversifying, doing their own D2C channel. Amazon, you just have a lot of limitations.
Yeah.
And so I guess I don't have like an amazing answer for that other than, you kind of do the best you can, but we're big fans of using that D2C channel to be the place where you do have a little bit more control over the messaging, the overall experience. You can sort of engineer and create more demand that, we think about it as like a rising tide raises all ships, right? So you see that this playbook of like even like Liquid Death, right? You can't buy the products online, but they spend a lot of money like advertising to their, advertising and even getting visibility to their store. They're building demand and trying to just like liquidate the costs and advertising for their D2C channel so that it fuels demand in wholesale and Amazon and places like that for the places where they're really making the profit. Wish I had a better answer for you there.
Okay. So maybe go ahead and continue, and then
Yeah, we'll kind of
any
cruise through this, and
questions?
then yeah, these are great questions, guys. Keep them coming. Throw them in, and we'll have time to go through more Q&A at the end here. So we talked about selling plans. Here's another one that a lot of brands don't realize, and they get wrong because a lot of people think that the best way to sell subscriptions and grow a subscription base is, you know what, I want to get somebody in, I want them to try it and see if they like it. And if they like it, they'll come back and subscribe. And so brands spend a lot of time trying to do things like creating upsell subscription, upsell flows for one-time buyers in Klaviyo or, doing win backs, that kind of thing. The truth is the biggest predictor of a customer's future behavior is how they were acquired for their first order. So if they spent a bunch of money with you on their first order, they're much more likely to spend a bunch of money on their second, right? Likewise, if you want somebody to subscribe, if you want to predictably and quickly grow your subscription base, your number one goal here should be maximizing your first order subscription take rate. Meaning what percentage of your total new customers come in on subscription versus come in on a one-time purchase. We're really big believers in that, if you want to be a subscription first business, you should really try everything you can to optimize your website and conversion funnel to bring people in on continuity right from the start. It's just going to make things so much easier for you if you want to actually grow your recurring revenue. We've seen brands go from kind of a more like reactive, post-purchase growth approach to more of like, okay, we're going to really go for it on the front end, getting people in on subscription, position it as a much better deal versus buying one off, and their subscription growth rate, 5 to 10x's, right? It's just much bigger lever. On the flip side, you think about that equation, subscribers acquired minus subscribers churned. The other limiting factor for a lot of brands, we'll talk more about this, is churn, right? So if you bring people in on subscription, but 80% of your subscribers cancel before their first renewal, what good is it? And so again, this is where a lot of brands have kind of backwards thinking where they spend so much time trying to like optimize their cancellation flows and their recovery, which are all great, right? You want to have that stuff in place, but the way to reduce churn is to proactively prevent it before it happens. And it's to understand why people are churning, why people are canceling, and then try to address that before they ever get to that point of canceling. And then number 6, subscriptions are not a set it and forget it thing. This is I used to run a full service email and SMS agency, right? And we would talk about this with email automations where we'd come in, we'd see brands and they hadn't touched their flows in Klaviyo for a year. And you go under the hood and you realize like, ooh, man, like there's a lot of old branding in there and there's like discount codes that aren't, working, or like links that aren't working and just things that aren't matched up. And when you don't optimize continuously, especially for something like subscriptions that has a long time horizon, you miss out on so much compounding growth by not taking advantage of kind of small incremental gains over time. So our philosophy is, it's important to have a workflow or a partner that can help you look at this on a regular recurring basis and constantly be evaluating what can you be doing to improve your subscription program. All right. So I know that's a lot.
Katie is asking what's a good app for what's a recommended Shopify app or tech for a subscription?
Yeah. You know what? There's a lot of them that we really like. We're big fans of kind of that like newer breed subscription apps. So like the Skios or Loop subscriptions or Stay.ai's. They all have slightly different flavors and strengths depending on the use case. So Katie, if you want, my email is going to be at the end of this and you'll get it. If you want to just shoot me a message, happy to kind of like share a couple ideas too. That's one of the things that we can kind of support brands with is helping decide or evaluate subscription apps. But those would be sort of the ones that I mentioned that I would maybe take a look at first.
There's actually one participant who asked if you can look at his or her brand and say tell us your thoughts. So that would be cool.
I love it. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that at the end. We'll have some time. We'll try to cruise through here. I'll cruise through these case studies quickly, and then we'll make sure that we have enough time to do some questions and maybe a little live review. So we're going to quickly go through 4, I think, sort of practical case studies, brands that we've worked with, anonymized, but just to kind of go through some different things that these brands thought about as they were trying to grow their subscription base. And across 4 different, what I would call some of the most common profiles or personas that we see, right? So we see brands that are just getting started. They're getting started on subscriptions, maybe just getting onto Shopify, potentially Amazon sellers making the move and adding on Shopify as a channel. Or maybe it's a brand who's always, the owner's been a little skeptical of subscriptions. We've been doing fine without them for years. And so that's one. We see the speed demons, and these are brands that are really scaling up aggressively. Oftentimes have their main problem is churn. The bleeding neck. So these are brands where they've been in business for years. They have put a lot of energy, money, time, resources into growing their subscription base, but for whatever reason, it's decaying. Every single week, every single month, it's decreasing, and we need to figure out what to do. And then we have the what's next. And these are brands that fall into, like this camp of, man, things are going pretty well. We're growing, but we know things could be better. So what should we be up to right now? What should we be focusing on, given that we don't have unlimited resources and bandwidth, right? So let's look at a couple of these case studies. Here's one for the getting started. This is a supplement brand. They're doing a couple of million a year on Amazon, adding Shopify as a D2C channel. Problem is kind of lacking of a lot of relevant historical customer data and insights, sort of like limited exposure on what apps to use, how to get things set up the right way. So just kind of getting started problems. And then the whole goal here is like, okay, establish a subscription program on Shopify increase their recurring revenue, D2C, while leveraging that established presence on Amazon, right? So some steps that we help them with. Number one, you got to get the groundwork right. So looking for patterns, competitive research, things that would really inform that go-to-market approach. Just kind of like really understanding what does that landscape look like? How do we get things set up the right way and leverage what's working on Amazon? Going back to the app question, this is a big one that helped is they got on the right subscription app from the start. So we don't migrating tech, if you've been around the block, it's just never fun, right? It doesn't matter what the subscription apps or the technology providers say, like, oh, white glove onboarding and all that stuff. Yes, maybe that's true, but it's still going to take a lot of time, energy, resources to re-platform. People lose subscribers in the process. It's usually messy. It's never fun, and it always takes time and energy away from other things. So I would just highly encourage those of you considering a new subscription app, or considering, like, maybe I'm not on the right app right now, but this is something I want to prioritize. Really consider evaluating what's going to be a good long-term fit. And then this brand, they stood up their Shopify store. They rolled out a minimum viable, what we call it, kind of an MVP subscription program. You get the basics right, and that's most of the battle, right? That's like 60 to 70% of, just like at most other things. So, common sense selling plans, a 1, 3, 6 month supply, every 3 month shipping for a 3-month supply, every 6 month shipping for an every 6-month supply. Got those core notifications, renewal reminders set up, got a cancel flow in place, got those plans kind of dialed in, and they're off to the races. Now, 15 to 20% of their new customers are coming in on a subscription for their first order, where subscribers have higher LTVs, repurchase rates, and they've got a great recurring revenue baseline that they can grow. They can control that experience. We kind of talked about that. If you need help, subscription apps, get in touch. I can give you some good recommendations, or we can even talk about it at the end of this. Okay, case study 2. So this is something that we see. We love working with these kinds of brands because the opportunity is so big, right? So this brand was a fast-growing pet supplement brand. They had a couple hero products and very subscription-focused funnels. So, they're driving to a custom landing page that really, sells the hero product and positions subscription as a much better value than buying one off. So they're getting a lot of people in on subscription and acquiring a lot of new customers every week and month. The problem is they have really high churn. So a lot of people that buy on subscription cancel before their first renewal. Some people are gaming the subscription for the discount. Some people, they just are canceling. They weren't sure why, and so they're having to continue pumping so much money to maintain that growth. So the whole goal here was, how do we diagnose and get churn down so that we can grow faster without hurting our CAC and our acquisition rates? And this is the equation, right? Because you don't want to, what happens on the back end and what happens on the front end are just two sides of the same coin. They're so intertwined. So you want to sort of take that do no harm approach of, like, what's going to provide the best net result for the business. How can we improve churn without hurting acquisition? So the main steps that we took here. So we did a full churn audit and diagnosis for the top hero products. Some key takeaways were that there are a few kind of specific product quality complaints that kept cropping up in the cancellation survey. One, they had a really high first 30-day cancel rate, and feedback that it's not working as expected. So what they did here, and this goes back to proactive churn prevention, is when you get the feedback and you get that data, now you can address it. And so this brand did a couple things. So one, they worked with their supplier and their manufacturer to kind of see what they could fix that product issue. They also added a couple components on the PDP and the landing pages to help kind of manage expectations about results timeline at the time of conversion. Again, managing expectations at conversion helped people have the right understanding of, like, okay, this might take a little bit longer to see results. And then they also improved that subscriber journey through the second renewal. So they dialed in kind of their onboarding and educational experience through email. So when somebody buys, they got a drip email series explaining how to use the product for best results. They tested a surprise and delight moment, so like a free gift at the first renewal, improve those renewal reminders, and dialed in the cancel flow. All of those things resulted in about a 30% reduction in total weekly churn, which then allowed them to start scaling up their subscriber base much faster. So you can see if you really play out that math, reducing churn, if you have acquisition figured out, is going to unlock so much additional growth for you without having to spend any more money. All right, I know I'm cruising through this. So I want to make sure that we have enough time for some Q&A here. So if you have any questions on these, be thinking about it, and we can address it at the end. Here's another case study. So this would be more of that bleeding neck cat litter business, and selling litter largely on monthly, quarterly subscription plans. Their active subscriber base has sort of been in decline for the last 12 months. And this business, a lot of really smart people on it. And they had already kind of run through the gamut of like a lot of different tactics and ways to potentially reduce churn, right? So they were so focused on our subscriber base is declining, so we need to get churn down. We need to get cancels down. And their goal, what do we have to do to turn the ship around and get moving in the right direction again? So here's kind of what we found. We hopped in, worked with them on audit diagnosis of what was really going on under the hood. And we realized that trying to get churn down maybe wasn't the best thing to focus on. Obviously, reducing cancellations and churn is really important, but their main problem, actually, the main bottleneck right now was their acquisition funnel. And they had some pretty glaring kind of conversion issues in their acquisition funnel that were hurting, the experience and causing a lot of drop off in the UI and UX. And the truth was at this point, it was a lot easier to actually boost conversions and drive up AOV by fixing those UI UX elements and restructuring the conversion funnel than trying to obsess over getting churn down. It's kind of that philosophy of like you can't save your way to true wealth. Like, sure, you can save money, but like if you really want to get rich, you have to increase your income. And it's kind of a similar thing with subscription growth, right? Like you can't save your way to, you can't like reduce churn your way to a growing subscription base. You have to eventually dial up acquisition. So that's what they did. And they fixed the issue, saw an immediate uptick. Then they kind of honestly dealt with some recurring product quality and stock issues. So this is like the unsexy part of business, obviously, that is like ultimately if a lot of people are churning because expectations weren't met or there's some product quality stuff, like until you get that fixed or you run out of stock, like you have to get those fundamentals right if you want to grow that recurring revenue. So they did that. And then, once they fixed the acquisition, kind of made some tough decisions and even killed off a product line, that sort of thing. They were able to work with us on sort of progressive experimentation on the churn side and growth, testing different assumptions and things that had previously just been kind of like thrown at the wall and hope that it worked. Now we're kind of taking a scientific approach to really understanding which specific things are moving the needle incrementally. And within 3 months, you go from losing 550 to 100 subscribers per week to gaining 30 to 50 per week again. So on a decline, now we're on a positive trend. All right, and then the last one, guys, we call this the what's next. This is a brand, 25 million per year supplement health products brand. Things seem like they're going really well. They're adding about 2,000 active subscriptions every month, largely on the back of a very recent successful new product launch. But they just kind of like don't have the internal bandwidth to truly understand the dynamics and what are the right next steps. Like, what do we do from here? So how do we keep growing and even expanding, growing faster with a clear roadmap? What we did is, again, you'll notice we keep coming back to this. You have to diagnose what's really going on and go deep on the actual numbers before you can recommend the plan. So we did a deep dive analysis for this brand. We really focused on their top 5 products because e-commerce is all about the 80-20, right? Your top products are going to drive 80+% of your overall growth. Same thing is very true for subscriptions. And so what we found is that most of their growth was being driven by one product, and then most of their churn was being driven by one of their other top products, which had a really high churn rate. So again, we then focused on that specific product, recommending things around optimizing the PDP, unboxing, email interventions to help address that big churn issue, setting better expectations on the result timeline for that product, gamifying retention with some surprise and delight, and then optimizing their cancellation flow to recover more cancellations with some specific rebuttals for that product. And then we were able to help them kind of reduce that monthly churn rate by about 15% versus where it was, which adds tens of thousands a month in MRR back into their bottom line. So a lot you can do here, 4 different examples. I know that's a lot to cover, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time, make sure we have some time for Q&A. So I'll just leave you with this. A couple really great examples to look at from a subscription standpoint. Brands we really like, Mindbody Green, that picture's not showing up, but I think they're a really good example of health supplement products, doing it really intuitively. Everyday Dose, I talk about them all the time. They sell a mushroom coffee, and they have a really cool, unique starter kit where they drive basically all new customers onto subscription. They really only offer a subscription offer, but make it extremely attractive through a starter kit. And then I really like Dime Beauty and the kind of skincare cosmetics, that space. I think that they have a really great program, really great product pages, bundle builder system approach. So I would take a look at those as some good examples. And we'll just wrap it up, and then we'll have time for Q&A here. So some key takeaways, if you didn't already get this: subscription models increase your valuations. So if you're looking to exit eventually, or just looking to have a better business, would really highly recommend focusing on that. You have a lot of diverse opportunities for recurring revenue. So you don't have to just do subscribe and save. You can look at subscription boxes. You can look at membership programs. A lot of creative ways to do it. And remember, it's about acquisition and churn. So you have to focus on both sides of that growth equation. Get more subscribers, keep them longer. And that's it. So hopefully this was valuable for you guys. I'll stop sharing my screen, and then we can, Yael, I can take some questions.
Yeah, of course. So I can read them if you'd like on the Q&A.
I'm looking at it too.
Charles, do you want to start with the end? Do you see that?
Sure. Yeah, I see it. So, okay. So Charles's question, what do you think about requiring new subscribers to commit to a 2-order minimum to obtain subscriber benefits? 15% discount, free shipping, 5th order free. So I have mixed feelings about this. I don't often see restricting cancellations being a very good tactic for e-commerce products. It's a little bit different. It's obviously different if you are selling a service or things like that, where you have maybe a minimum engagement. But in today's economy, people are just so used to feeling that they should be able to cancel anytime, canceling. And so I think you can do that, but you definitely need to include it on the PDP and the buy box, like make it very clear that's the case, which is going to hurt your conversions. And it's also going to give you a lot more kind of like customer complaints. So you kind of have to weigh up the pros and cons. If it were me, I would focus on, I would not do that probably in terms of restricting cancellations. Now, if you were saying to obtain subscriber benefits, I actually think that's a better approach, where you could say, hey, subscribe, and then on your 3rd renewal, your discount steps up. So maybe you get, subscribe and say 15%, but after 3 renewals, it jumps up to 20%, plus you get free shipping, or plus you get some other benefit or a surprise gift. That is a cool way to kind of reduce your exposure to discounting early on, and also sort of gamify that retention and encourage people to stay for longer periods of time. I think hopefully that answered your question. If you have any follow-ups, feel free to drop them in, Charles. Okay, another question we have. At how many monthly units sold on Amazon should we open a Shopify store? We're in supplements. Gosh, I don't know, Yael, do you have a perspective on that? For me, my feeling, the longer I am in business and the more companies that I see, the mindset that I always have to come back to now myself is focus. So I'm just not a big fan of trying to spread yourself too thin across a bunch of things too early. I would rather go really deep and flesh out an opportunity on one channel before expanding. So personally, I would think you would want to be doing, at least 7 figures on Amazon before trying to really invest a bunch of time on Shopify. But there's so many different ways you could slice it. There's no kind of like one answer. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
It's also quite an investment to have a
It is.
successful Shopify, so you may not be able to do it until you get there. But I think it's less on the number of products or monthly unit. It's more of are you ready? Do you have the team? Do you have the knowledge to do it? If we look at Amazon businesses that were successful on Shopify, that started on Amazon and then were successful there, you don't see them all the time. These are different skills. So very often they would bring a partner or an agency or someone who knows what they're doing, or they would do it themselves. But like you say, it can take some of your time and focus. So there's no clear answer, of course, when it comes to valuations and exit. Obviously, a Shopify store that sells well has a good valuation, and that adds to your business. But what at the end you want EBITDA, you want growth, and if you know Amazon and that's what you know best, you may want to focus on that at the beginning. So yeah, I guess the answer is that it depends. If you have someone who knows it and you have the funds, then why not? Otherwise, you may want to wait a bit, in my opinion. You have quite a few questions, so maybe pick 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm taking a look. So thanks Liz for that. She said it was super interesting and informative. That's awesome. Glad to hear it. We have another question. So the macro environment right now seems to be tougher with consumer spend slowing. I believe this year will be a slower growth year for top line. So we're working on increasing subscription during this time. What are your thoughts on growing subscriptions during a recession? I feel people will make smarter purchases right now. Yes. I'm sure that if you have an e-commerce business, you are probably noticing that we're having a bit of a vibe session, right? Like I think that's some of what they've said. It's like people are not feeling particularly rosy. And I think most of us, myself included, like when I'm thinking about what am I going to spend money on, I'm a lot more selective. Like I'm trying to be a lot more thoughtful. I'm not as impulsive anymore. So yes, people are being more selective, which makes it harder in e-commerce regardless of whether it's subscription or not. The truth is that how do you grow in a recession is you have to be really excellent. Like you have to actually you have to have a great offer, great products. If you want people to get on subscription, you have to, make it, I would say, much more attractive than buying one off. So a better offer. You have to build that case for, why buy this on continuity versus one time, right? And there's no magic bullet here, but I think if you get the fundamentals right, you get things dialed in and you really decide like, okay, I'm going to put most of my focus into growing subscriptions. It's still very much doable, but it's not easy. Nobody's going to say it's easy. It's very, very difficult, but it is attainable.
It's interesting the discussions around recession. Some categories are really not feeling anything, and some categories are starting to talk about that. It's also the product within the category. So you may be in a certain category and sell a few products that are more sensitive to recessions, while others are, you need them. So you may, if you're worried and you already see changes, you may want to expand to additional products that are less sensitive. And then you have, go ahead, continue, choose the one.
Sure,
that
I'll kind of read. So we have one from Britta. I'm bringing out a new supplement line for women over 50 on Amazon. It's going to be through Shopify, also going to be through Shopify to get the customer's info. I've been advised to bring out one product, grow sales to 30 to 50, then bring out the next and repeat up to 5 products. In this case, as soon as you have 2 products, do you start the subscription? And then with a third added in, what are the good subscription apps in your opinion? Single options and bundle option. Okay, so I have a feeling that this is somebody from the 1% from Ryan Moran's group. I'm just gonna put that because that's if you follow Ryan Moran, that's like his 12 months to 1 million model. It's like 3 to 5 products, each doing 30 to 50 orders a day or 100 orders a day, and you've got a great business. I think that's a great way to do it. I also am a big fan of releasing one great product and going all in on growing that product. You have businesses that are doing a ton of revenue, 8-figure brands. I think about like Heights, they sell like a smart supplement, or you look at an everyday dose where they have one product, basically 1 or 2 products tops, but they're just doing so much volume on that hero product. And what you'll find is that most businesses do not have an even distribution of orders across all of their products. They have 80% of their revenue and orders come from one product, and then 20% come from the next, especially in that early scaling up season. So I would maybe consider doubling down, like really figuring out how you can double down and crack the acquisition code on one product and make that experience amazing before trying to go too crazy with expansion. And then I would enable subscription for all of your products though. So I wouldn't like wait to do it on Shopify and wait to enable it for, at some future date. I would just say like, get started, just put it as an option for all of your products and see what the market, how it responds. You might be really surprised. Good subscription apps for single options and bundles. There's, different price points. Like my favorite, maybe more like higher end subscription app, really powerful might be like something like Skio. If you're looking for something maybe a bit more affordable, you might look at something like Loop subscriptions or Atomic. But all of them are good for bundling. And wow.
And then you have the baby feel on Amazon. Do you want to take a look and show us?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So baby
They have
feel, diaper pail refills, I think. Okay. So let's go ahead and check. I'll share my screen here. Now, obviously, this is an Amazon brand. So, I mean, I guess one question is like, are we selling D2C on Shopify? If not, the kind of overall strategic recommendations may be a little bit more limited in terms of like what could be done. But I mean, if you look, we can look at the listing pages and everything. So one thing too, like I'm seeing the nice call to action, extra 5% off, extra 15% off on this, which is great. They're really calling it out to subscribe.
Is this the type of product that would fit well one of the models you've presented on their Shopify?
Yes. Yeah, it would.
It's a classic one, isn't it?
It is. And I think that the big thing here is they're already doing something smart, which is they're defaulting to every 2 months, and they're putting that most common annotation on the delivery cadence. Because when it comes to Amazon, right? So you need to, one, build that, like, is it a replenishable thing? Great. Make an offer for subscribe and save. And then I think one of your biggest levers is just seeing how you can best align your delivery cadence with what customers need and maybe reducing decision fatigue. So to me, this is a lot of options to offer here. And I would wonder how many, I would like to look at the distribution of what number of people are on each one of these delivery intervals, because I would consider seeing if we could trim this down a little bit. I would rather have fewer options, and just because ranging all the way from 2 weeks to 6 months is like a huge range. And you might think that that's best because you're giving people the option to do whatever they want, but you really got to imagine, like, okay, what's the impact on conversions by having to look at all these different things, versus just going with maybe the 3 to 4 most common options.
Yeah.
So something to consider. And I'm not sure, looking at how many actual refills are in here. One 4-pack refill holds up to 13. So that's a lot of diapers. I mean, like, that's a lot of diapers. And I cannot imagine that most users are needing that every 2 weeks, right? Or any 3 weeks. So I guess that would probably be my biggest initial thought, is like, how frequently are people really going through this? And if you want to increase subscribe and save conversions, probably trimming those selections down and maybe seeing if you can better align them with that actual consumption pattern.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All
I think
right.
we covered the different questions. Thanks a lot, Bryan, for this, for your time. Super, super interesting. Maybe you can show your you can present your email address so that people can approach you if they have questions. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
here's one. So yeah, guys, thanks so much for joining. If you've stuck around all this way, we are very grateful for you. I know this is a lot of material, but hopefully it was valuable. So yeah, like I was saying, if you are considering selling your business, I'll let her kind of give a quick plug there, but would highly recommend you get in touch with them. Do it sooner than later if you think that you're gonna eventually want to sell, because much better to start the conversation early, figure out what needs to happen to get your business ready, than wait till you just want to be out or you really want to sell and realize that you're not going to get as good a valuation as you can because you didn't prep it the right way 6 to 12 months ahead. And then I'll let Yael, anything you want to touch on there?
No, and then on your side, you also have consultation as to how to improve the subscription, right? So it would be great.
Correct.
So we will also have the video, and on the video we'll present the details. And if you want the presentation, of course, happy to send it. So thanks again, Bryan, for your time. I will definitely do it again, a follow-up one. And thank you everyone for joining us. See you soon.
Thanks everybody. Thanks, Yael.
Thank you.
Bye.